Today we're going to be exploring the abandoned ghost ship that's been trapped on this reef for over 30 years.
Across our planet's vast oceans and along the shores of forgotten harbors, abandoned ships stand as silent witnesses to tales of adventure, tragedy, and mystery. These rusting giants, once symbols of human ambition and engineering prowess, now lie dormant, surrendered to the elements. Whether fallen victim to nature's fury, ensnared in human conflict, or left to decay through negligence, each ship has a unique story. Here, we've assembled the most captivating tales from across the globe for you to explore. Number 12. The Cincinnati Ghost Ship. The Cincinnati Ghost Ship, originally known as the Celt, is an abandoned vessel with an intriguing history that spans over a century. This ship, which now lies forgotten in a creek off the Ohio River near Cincinnati, Ohio, has a storied past that includes multiple roles, transformations, and notable associations. The vessel was launched on April 12, 1902, by Pusey and Jones in Wilmington, Delaware. Initially, it served as a luxury yacht for J. Rogers Maxwell, a railroad executive. The yacht was an embodiment of opulence, designed for leisurely cruises and high society gatherings. However, its destiny was far from a mere pleasure craft. With the onset of World War I, the U.S. Navy acquired the Celt on July 3, 1917, renaming it USS Sachem. During its naval service, the ship played a pivotal role in anti-submarine patrols and was lent to Thomas Edison. Edison conducted government-funded experiments aboard the Sachem, working on countermeasures against German U-boats. After World War I, the ship was returned to its owner, but soon found a new purpose as a fishing excursion vessel during the Great Depression. It was sold to Jacob "Jake" Martin, who converted it into a chartered fishing boat. The vessel continued to serve recreational purposes until World War II, when it was again requisitioned by the Navy in 1942, this time renamed USS Phoenixite. During World War II, the Phoenixite was used for training and patrol duties. It played a significant role in training sailors on sonar equipment and patrolling the waters off Key West and later Long Island Sound. After the war, the ship was returned to Martin, who resumed its use as a fishing vessel. In the late 1940s, the ship's life took another turn when it was sold to the Circle Line sightseeing cruises in New York City. Renamed Sightseer and later Circle Line 5, the vessel became a flagship for the company's fleet, offering sightseeing tours around Manhattan. During this time, the Circle Line 5 ferried millions of tourists, providing them with unforgettable views of New York City. By the early 1980s, the Circle Line 5 was retired from active service. It was sold to Robert Miller of Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, for $7,500. Miller intended to use the ship for recreational purposes, but it ended up abandoned in a small tributary of the Ohio River, where it remains today. The vessel, now known as the Cincinnati Ghost Ship, sits partially submerged and overgrown with vegetation, a haunting relic of its vibrant past. The ship's current state is a far cry from its days of luxury and naval service. Rusting and deteriorating, it has become a subject of fascination for urban explorers and history enthusiasts. Number 11. Mary D. Hume. Constructed in 1881 by R.D. Hume for his burgeoning cannery business, the Mary D. Hume was a vessel built from local white cedar, destined to play a diverse role in maritime history. Initially tasked with transporting freight and supplies between Gold Beach and San Francisco, the ship quickly became a backbone for regional trade, supporting the local economy by moving canned salmon and timber during her first 10 years. As the salmon industry waned due to overharvesting and environmental challenges, the Mary D. Hume transitioned to the demanding world of Arctic whaling. Purchased by the Pacific Whaling Company in 1889, she embarked on extended voyages into the icy waters of the Bering Sea, marking a decade-long stint that saw her recording the largest catch of baleen whale. The isolation and extreme conditions during these voyages were grueling, often leading to severe hardships for her crew, including scurvy and the mental toll of the cold and loneliness. Post-whaling, the Mary D. Hume found new life as a tugboat and later as a halibut fishing vessel. Her engine converted from steam to diesel as she adapted to the times. Her service spanned nearly a century, demonstrating remarkable longevity in an industry known for its harsh conditions and constant evolution. Unfortunately, attempts to preserve her as a museum ship failed after her retirement in 1978. She sank during an unfortunate accident in 1985, and with insufficient funds to salvage her, she was left to the mercy of the elements. Today, the remains of the Mary D. Hume are still visible, lying just 100 feet from her original construction site on the Rogue River. Now listed on the National Register of Historic Places, she serves as a poignant reminder of the past, her deteriorating frame offering a habitat for local wildlife and a historic site for visitors and locals alike. Number 10. SS Maheno. Built in 1905 by William Denny and Brothers in Dumbarton, Scotland, the SS Maheno emerged as a luxury passenger liner, not merely a vessel, but a marvel of early 20th century engineering. The Maheno featured a triple-screw propulsion system that made her one of the fastest ships cruising the waters between New Zealand and Australia. Her sleek design and opulent interiors catered to over 300 passengers, who reveled in unparalleled luxury. The dining saloons glowed under the light of chandeliers, fine china set on tables. She held the record for the fastest crossing of the Tasman Sea, making the journey from Sydney to Auckland in just over 2 days. The outbreak of World War I saw the Maheno repurposed as a hospital ship. Her decks, once scenes of leisure and laughter, were transformed into wards where the moans of wounded soldiers echoed. She was painted white with green stripes and red crosses, sailing under the command of the New Zealand Naval Forces. The Maheno ferried thousands of wounded from the shores of Gallipoli to the safety of hospitals in Egypt and Malta, her medical team working tirelessly through the chaos of war. After the war, she returned to her civilian roots, but the advent of newer, more efficient ships with diesel engines marked the decline of her era. In 1935, deemed too outdated for modern needs, she was sold to a Japanese shipbreaking company. Her final journey was as dramatic as her life. While being towed from Melbourne to Osaka, a fierce cyclone snapped her tow line. Helplessly adrift, the Maheno and her 8-man crew were eventually cast ashore on Fraser Island, Australia. The attempts to refloat her failed, and there, on what is now known as 75 Mile Beach, the Maheno succumbed to the elements. Over decades, she has been battered by storms and corroded by salt, her once grand body now a skeleton of rust. Despite this, her story remains a magnet for tourists and history buffs alike, who visit Fraser Island to see her remains. Number 9. The Pasuta Shipwreck. The Pasuta Shipwreck is an iconic landmark on the shores of Haida Gwaii in British Columbia, Canada. This wooden-hulled steam freighter was built in 1918 in Raymond, Washington, as part of the United States Shipping Board's emergency fleet during World War I. Measuring 264 feet in length, the Pasuta was designed to meet the urgent need for cargo ships during the war. However, shortly after the war ended, the ship was deemed surplus and sold for civilian use. In the late 1920s, the Pasuta was converted into a log barge capable of carrying large quantities of timber. On December 11, 1928, the Pasuta was being towed by the tugboat Imbricaria through the treacherous Hecate Strait when a severe storm struck. Gale-force winds and rough seas caused the Pasuta to break free from its tow line and run aground near the mouth of the Tlel River on East Beach in Naikun Provincial Park. Despite efforts to salvage the vessel, the Pasuta was abandoned and left to the elements. Over the decades, the ship has gradually deteriorated, but its bow still protrudes from the sand, creating a striking and photogenic scene. The site has become a popular destination for hikers who can access the wreck via the Pasuta Shipwreck Trail. The trail to the Pasuta Shipwreck begins at the Tlel River Day Use Area and covers approximately 10 kilometers round trip. The first part of the trail winds through a beautiful old-growth forest of Sitka spruce and cedar trees, with lush green moss and ferns lining the path. After crossing Geeky Creek via a wooden bridge, hikers emerge onto the banks of the Tlel River. From here, the trail follows the river to the beach, where the wreck of the Pasuta becomes visible. Number 8. Mamie S. Barrett. The Mamie S. Barrett, a historic stern-wheel towboat, was constructed in 1921 at the Howard Shipyard in Jeffersonville, Indiana. Measuring 146 feet in length and 30 feet in width, it was initially built for Oscar F. Barrett of Cincinnati. This steel-hulled vessel, featuring a scow bow and powered by compound, non-condensing engines, was primarily used for river towing. In October 1923, the Mamie S. Barrett was sold to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and stationed in Florence, Alabama. It played a crucial role in inspecting and maintaining the Mississippi River, and even served as the headquarters for President Franklin D. Roosevelt during his inspection tour of the river in 1935. During its time with the Corps, the boat was renamed Penniman and later reassigned to the Rock Island District. After being decommissioned in 1947, the Mamie S. Barrett underwent a series of transformations. It was sold to the Volmar Brothers Construction Company and then to the Harbor Point Yacht Club in West Alton, Missouri, where it was repurposed as a clubhouse and restaurant under the name Piazza. The boat's machinery was removed and one of its boilers was turned into a lighthouse. In 1981, the vessel was acquired by the Oberl family, who restored its original name and moved it to Eddyville, Kentucky, where it operated as a restaurant. By 1987, John and Mary Hoseman purchased the Mamie S. Barrett and relocated it to Vicksburg, Mississippi, where it continued to function as a restaurant and showboat theater. Over the years, the Mamie S. Barrett changed locations and purposes several times, eventually ending up beached near Deer Park, Louisiana, in the mid-1990s. It remained there, gradually deteriorating, until it caught fire in 2017, causing significant damage. Despite various attempts to preserve the vessel, including interest from the Howard Steamboat Museum, the boat was never fully restored. Number 7. MV Captainus. MV Captainus, often referred to as the Sugar Boat, is an extraordinary sight lying on a sandbank in the Firth of Clyde, Scotland. The vessel was originally launched in 1946 as Norden by A.S. Nakskov Skibbs of Denmark. In 1963, she was sold to Greek owners and renamed Captainus. The ship's fate took a dramatic turn on January 27, 1974. That evening, a severe storm struck the west coast of Scotland. Captainus was anchored at the tail of the bank near Greenock, waiting to deliver a cargo of sugar to the James Watt dock. As the storm intensified, the ship began to drag her anchor. The captain, Theodorakis Ioannis, ordered the engines to be started, intending to move the ship to the sheltered waters of Gareloch. Unfortunately, before the ship could gain power, she drifted into the path of the BP tanker British Light. The tanker's anchor chains ripped through Captainus's hull, causing water to flood in rapidly. Realizing the dire situation, Captain Ioannis decided to beach the vessel on a nearby sandbank to prevent her from sinking in deeper waters. The crew executed this maneuver successfully, but the ship began to list severely. Pilot boats, including the tug Labrador and the passenger vessel Rover, quickly arrived on the scene. Most of the crew were able to jump onto the Rover and were safely taken ashore. The captain and a few crew members stayed on the Labrador, watching as their ship finally rolled onto her side the next morning. Since then, Captainus has remained on the sandbank, a prominent fixture in the Clyde. The wreck has been extensively looted, leaving behind mostly the steel hull and superstructure, although some wooden decking remains remarkably intact. Over time, the wreck has become a habitat for marine life and birds, turning it into an unintended sanctuary. The ship's position, partially submerged, with about 8 meters of the hull below sea level and the starboard side rising about 4 meters above, makes it appear like a small island from certain angles. Despite initial thoughts of removing the wreck or blowing it up, these plans were abandoned due to concerns about potential environmental damage, particularly to the nearby bird sanctuary at Ardmore Point. Number 6. Eduard Bolin. This 2,272-ton German cargo ship was built in 1891 and met its untimely demise on September 5, 1909. The ship was on a voyage from Swakopmund to Table Bay when it encountered a thick fog that led to its grounding in Conception Bay. The Skeleton Coast, where Eduard Bolin now lies, is notorious for its desolate and harsh environment. The coast's name is a grim nod to the many shipwrecks and the skeletal remains of ships that litter this stretch of the Namib Desert. The coast is characterized by its treacherous waters, frequent fog, and powerful currents, which have claimed many vessels over the years. The Eduard Bolin, however, is perhaps the most iconic of these wrecks. At the time of its sinking, the Edward Bolen was carrying cargo intended for trade, but the thick fog proved too challenging for navigation. As the ship ran aground, it was gradually overtaken by the encroaching desert sands, creating the surreal sight of a shipwreck stranded far from the sea. Today, the Edward Bolen lies approximately 400 meters inland, appearing as if it is slowly being consumed by the desert. The ship's current location, partially buried in the sand, makes it seem like a ghost ship in the middle of the desert. This striking image has made the Edward Bolen a popular subject for photographers and adventurers. Visitors to the Skeleton Coast can explore the Edward Bolen, which often include 4x4 excursions across the desert. These tours provide a close-up view of the wreck and offer insights into its history and the broader maritime history of the region. Despite its isolation, the Edward Bolen has not been entirely forgotten. It has featured in various media, including documentaries and television series, highlighting its enduring fascination. It was showcased in the 1987 film Steel Dawn and the 2016 Amazon video series The Grand Tour, among others. Before we move on, here's today's subscriber's pick. Take a look at this striking image of the Soviet cruiser Murmansk, a vessel whose storied career didn't end at decommissioning. Known as the cruiser that never gave up, the Murmansk began its journey in 1955, serving the Northern Fleet with distinction. Fast forward to 1944, it was sold for scrap and destined for India. Yet, fate had other plans. During its tow, the ship broke free and grounded near Survær, a village in northern Norway. This photo captures the Murmansk mid-dismantlement, a process that started in 2009 in an effort to minimize environmental impact. The dismantling was no small feat, involving the construction of a breakwater and a dry dock around the cruiser. Completed in 2012, the project was a significant engineering effort. What are your thoughts on this maritime giant's final chapter? Let us know in the comments section below. Number 5. Kiptopeki Concrete Ships. The Kiptopeki Concrete Ships, located off the coast of Kiptopeke Beach in Virginia, form a fascinating maritime relic known as the Kiptopeke Breakwater. These ships, 9 in total, were part of a fleet built during World War II. Due to a critical shortage of steel, the U.S. Maritime Commission turned to concrete, an abundant and inexpensive material, to construct these vessels. They became known as the McCloskey ships, after the Philadelphia-based construction company, Matthew H. McCloskey and Company, that built them. These ships were originally intended for use in the Atlantic and Pacific theaters of the war, serving as cargo transports and training vessels. However, after the war, their purpose shifted significantly. In December 1948, 9 of these ships were strategically sunk to create a breakwater for the ferry terminal at Kiptopeke Beach. This breakwater was crucial in protecting the terminal from the harsh weather and strong tides of the Chesapeake Bay. The names of the ships forming the Kiptopeke Breakwater are as follows: SS Arthur Newell Talbot, SS Edwin Thatcher, SS Robert Whitman Leslie, SS Willis A. Slater, SS Leonard Chase, Wason, SS Richard Kidder, Meade, SS John Grant, SS William Foster Cowham, and SS Willard A. Pollard. Each ship is named after pioneers and innovators in the concrete industry. Today, these partially submerged ships are not only a historical landmark, but also a thriving habitat for marine life and birds. The concrete material of the ships provides an ideal surface for barnacles, algae, and other marine organisms to attach, creating a rich ecosystem. The Kiptopeke Breakwater is a popular spot for recreational activities. Kayakers and anglers often visit the area to paddle around and fish near the ships. In addition to recreational use, the Kiptopeke State Park, where these ships are located, offers a range of amenities and activities. The park features cabins, lodges, campsites, hiking and biking trails, a boat ramp, a lighted fishing pier, picnic areas, and a swimming beach. Educational programs focusing on the area's natural history, birding, and bay ecology are also available, making it a great destination for families and nature enthusiasts. Number 4. Francisco Morazan. Built in 1922 as the Arcadia in Hamburg, Germany, this 234-foot vessel changed hands and names multiple times throughout its service. It was known as Elbing, Empire Congress, Bruns, Skuld, Ringas, Los Mayos, and finally Francisco Morazan in 1958. This ship's life reflects the tumultuous nature of maritime history, especially during and after World War II. On November 27, 1960, the Francisco Morazan departed Chicago with a cargo of 1,118 tons destined for Rotterdam and Hamburg. This cargo included canned chicken, empty shampoo bottles, toys, and other goods. The ship's captain, Eduardo Trevises, was on his first command. The journey quickly became challenging due to thick fog and a malfunctioning feeder pump for the boiler, which forced the crew to drift for 8 hours while repairs were made. This delay was critical as the ship was racing to leave the Great Lakes before the St. Lawrence Seaway closed on December 3rd. As the ship passed Point Betsy on the night of November 28th, a blinding snowstorm struck, severely reducing visibility and pushing the Francisco Morazan off course. At approximately 7:15 p.m., the ship ran aground just 300 yards from the shore of South Manitou Island. The impact was significant, but fortunately, there were no injuries among the crew, which included the captain's pregnant wife, Anastasia. The U.S. Coast Guard responded to the Morazan's distress call with 3 vessels and a civilian tug. Despite their efforts, bad weather and rough seas prevented a successful salvage. By December 4th, it was clear that the ship could not be saved, and the crew was evacuated. Attempts to salvage the cargo were also abandoned due to the harsh conditions. Following the abandonment, the wreck of the Francisco Morazan became a popular site for island residents and visitors. Items from the cargo, such as canned chicken and toys, were scavenged by locals. Over time, the shipwreck has become part of the Manitou Passage Underwater Preserve, protecting the site and allowing it to be a point of interest for hikers, divers, and history enthusiasts. Number 3. Peter Iredale. The wreck of the Peter Iredale, a 4-masted steel bark, has captivated visitors to Fort Stevens State Park in Oregon for over a century. Built in 1890 in Maryport, England, the Peter Iredale was a cargo ship measuring 287 feet in length. On October 25, 1906, dense fog and strong southeast winds drove the ship aground on Clatsop Spit as it was en route to the Columbia River from Salina Cruz, Mexico, to pick up a cargo of wheat bound for the United Kingdom. Despite the ship's unfortunate grounding, all 27 crew members, including 2 stowaways, were rescued safely. Captain H. Lawrence attempted to steer the ship away from danger, but was thwarted by the harsh weather conditions. The ship struck the sand with such force that 3 of its masts snapped upon impact. After the rescue, Captain Lawrence reportedly saluted his ship, saying, "May God bless you, and may your bones bleach in these sands." Initially, there were plans to tow the ship back to sea. However, after waiting for favorable weather conditions for several weeks, the ship had already listed to port and become deeply embedded in the sand. Consequently, the salvage rights were sold in 1917, but the ship was never dismantled, leaving its remains to gradually succumb to the elements. Today, the Peter Iredale wreck is a popular tourist attraction, drawing thousands of visitors annually. The wreck is easily accessible and visible at all times of the tide, though low tide offers the best views. Over the years, the ship's structure has deteriorated significantly, with only the bow, some ribs, and a few masts still visible. Fort Stevens State Park, where the wreck is located, offers a plethora of activities for visitors. From beachcombing and birdwatching to hiking and picnicking, there's something for everyone. Number 2. La Famille Express. La Famille Express, a fascinating shipwreck, is located near the island of Providenciales in the Turks and Caicos Islands. This iconic wreck is situated about 2 miles off Long Bay Beach, easily visible in the shallow waters of the Caicos banks. Its journey to this final resting place is as intriguing as its current state. The vessel's history dates back to 1953, when it was originally built in the Soviet Union. Initially named Fort Shevchenko, it was an oil-rig service ship tasked with supplying remote offshore oil wells for the Soviet Navy. The ship was named after a military port town on the Caspian Sea's eastern shore. After decades of service, the vessel was decommissioned in 1992 and subsequently sold to private owners. By 1999, it was renamed La Famille Express and operated under the Panama flag, transporting bulk rock throughout the Caribbean. In September 2004, La Famille Express was caught in the ferocious winds of Hurricane Francis. The unmanned vessel dragged its anchor from the South Dock area of Providenciales and drifted nearly 12 miles before becoming firmly grounded in the shallow waters of the Caicos Banks. The ship has remained there ever since, creating a unique and picturesque landmark. Today, La Famille Express is a popular destination for visitors to Turks and Caicos. The wreck is a favored spot for boat tours, jet ski excursions, and even adventurous kiteboarders and paddleboarders. Experienced kayakers also make the journey out to the wreck, though it is not recommended for casual paddlers due to the 2-mile distance offshore. Exploring the shipwreck offers a mix of awe and caution. While the decaying structure of La Famille Express is captivating, it is important to be mindful of the dangers. The rusting metal and sharp edges pose significant hazards, and visitors are advised against climbing onto the vessel. For those planning to visit, the best way to reach La Famille Express is by booking a boat tour or a jet ski excursion from Long Bay Beach. Number 1. MV Panagiotis. The MV Panagiotis, beached on the stunning Shipwreck Beach on the Greek island of Zakynthos, is a captivating sight. The 157-foot-long cargo ship began its journey in 1937 as the St. Bedan in Scotland. Its final journey in 1980 under dubious circumstances has fueled tales and mysteries that continue to intrigue visitors. Legend has it that during a fierce storm, the Panagiotis, laden with contraband cigarettes bound for Italy, was pursued by the Greek Navy. The tumultuous weather and relentless chase allegedly led to the ship's grounding on the white sands of this secluded beach. Fast forward over 44 years, and the shipwreck remains a haunting sight. The rusted orange remains of the MV Panagiotis contrast sharply with the pristine white sand of the beach, and are framed beautifully by towering 200-foot limestone cliffs. This site, also known as Smuggler's Beach, is not just a relic, but a snapshot of maritime lore, wrapped in tales of smuggling and possibly even human trafficking, although these darker aspects remain unverified. Zakynthos is not just a backdrop for this dramatic piece of history, it's a vibrant destination in its own right. Known for its affordability and breathtaking landscapes, the island draws numerous tourists, especially from April through October. Access to this isolated beach is only by boat, with many local tour operators offering trips to this iconic location. Above the beach, a photo platform perched 200 meters up the cliff offers a panoramic view of the entire cove. However, visitors are cautioned to be careful. The steep cliffs have been sites of accidents in the past, with at least 2 tourists having tragically fallen while attempting to capture the perfect selfie. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.